There we go. And welcome. This is Tampa Home Talk. We're so glad you're here. This is another exciting episode of our show. And today we're going to talk about fire safety. And in the house, we have Mr. Bill Wade. He is with Tampa Firefighters Museum, and he's quite an accomplished guy. 4 books we're going to talk about. I'm a published author myself, and that is a love language of mine. So, welcome to the show, Bill.
Well, thank you for having me here today.
I'm so glad you're here. So, let's talk to the person listening and share a little bit about your background. Would love to know, like Pat was telling me some of the stories on the way in about how you started in the 80s. Is that right? Do I have that right?
I actually started back in 1973.
Okay.
Volunteer fire department up in the Philadelphia area. If you're involved with the fire department, you know, especially up in the Northeast, the volunteers are a big service up there. Provide a lot of service. I got my initial training there. Got hooked on the ambulance squad side of the fire department. Went over, became an EMT even before I got out of high school.
Okay. Wow.
From there, unfortunately, it was the mid 70s. And I'm out of high school and I have a high school degree, and the economy's not doing real well. So I went in the Air Force. Did 4 years as an Air Force medic. Got out here in Tampa and have not left Tampa since.
The story we hear from a lot of people.
Well, that's it. I was down at MacDill Air Force Base at the time. It was a totally different town than it is now, to say
Oh my
the least.
goodness. I'm from here. Yes, you are 1000% right.
So
We used to be a small town. We're not a small town anymore.
oh no, and we are to a certain degree, but we're not. In that, it seems like if I talk to this person over here, they know this one, and this one, and a lot of the old connections are still there. But you're right, as more and more people move into our area, it spreads out.
We're the melting pot. We're just not the small little quaint city we used to be.
Oh,
A lot of people that have been here for a long time or grew up here like me, like you. We're well connected. We know a lot of people in the neighborhood and in the neighborhood in the community, and it is a little small, right? But overall, it's just not the same small town it used to be.
that's for when I got on Tampa Fire Department around 1981. It seemed like everybody was somebody's first cousin, second cousin, nephew, niece. They
Yeah.
all went to Jefferson
Yeah.
or Chamberlain, or
Go
one of those.
Chiefs, that's where I
Oh,
was.
was that?
Yeah.
Or one of those few high schools that were in town nowadays. When you look at how big Hillsborough and Pasco
Yes.
and Polk has become as it's spread out, it's not quite the same.
Yeah, it's a lot different. Shoot, I was gonna ask you something that I just it left me that quick. Anyway, I was gonna ask you something based on what you said. Now it just escaped me already. So anyway,
Well, so I did the Air Force, did a little work for private ambulance over in St. Petersburg, and then I worked for Clearwater Fire Department for a while. It was wonderful working for Clearwater. I even got to work at the beach fire
Oh.
station
we
during
probably know some of the same people.
during spring break 1980,
Oh
which
boy.
was quite interesting. And then I worked for Tampa for about 30 years, and I ended my career meeting people like our friend here, Pat, because I was doing the media relations
Yeah.
for the fire department.
So you've had a long, like, resume rap sheet as it relates to the firehouse. Just being funny. As it relates to the fire world, right? And the EMT, they're also interconnected. Paramedic. What was your favorite part of everything you've done in this long journey you've had?
The interesting thing was I always found something different to do. As I was growing up in the career, I had some good mentors. No matter what the profession is, you need a good mentor to help you
Absolutely.
out,
Yes.
who guided my way. I remember one fellow, and if you're in the fire and EMS profession and you're in this area, you know this gentleman. His name is Dennis Jones. He was the Tampa Fire Chief for a while. He was Hillsborough County Fire Chief for a while. But when I first knew him, he was just a peer And he seemed to have the right vision. I remember him calling me once, said, "Bill, you decided not to go to this certain class. Why not?" I said, "Well, I just don't know that I have the time." He pretty much said, "Make the time, go."
That's
And he
good.
was right. It was a good decision. And so it's always good to grab those mentors and people who have maybe a better vision than yourself.
Yeah.
It always makes you better.
So it's a pretty cool journey. Like you're really involved, obviously, with the community. What's your part that you do with the Tampa Firefighters Museum? Because I think I've been there once to an event because you guys do rent the space out for events, right? But talk about the history of the museum, how it came about, what all you do, what's your role with the museum?
Well, around 1995, the department, Tampa Fire Department, was turning 100 years old. And we were being told by historians that somewhere around that 100-year mark, your your history, you start losing your ability to reach back and touch the history, the things that have happened before. And you need a place to store that history. So these group of firefighters got together and they went down and they met with Mayor Dick Greco.
Mhm.
You have to recognize that name if you've been
Oh,
to there
yes.
for a while. And told the mayor we wanted to start a fire museum. And of course, Dick Greco, he's a big supporter of the community. He's like, of course, I support you. He put us with a fellow who was his right hand person, Fernando Noriega. Fernando Noriega, for several months, worked with this group of firefighters, uh, got the nonprofit created, several other things, came back a few months later to meet with the mayor again and let him know the progress. And there was a fellow sitting next to the mayor, and nobody knew who he was. Well, he was the city real estate fellow, and the mayor sold the old Tampa fire station, built in 1911, to the group for $1.
Wow.
Now, it does say in the deed, as long as it's a fire museum, so if it's not a fire museum, it reverts back to the city. Well, that was kind of the easy part. Now we have this 1911 fire station that's been poorly maintained for many years, and now this group has got to raise millions of dollars to restore and basically create a museum. And the other thing that we
That's a
learned,
not a cheap process. What fire station was that? What number?
this was Tampa Fire Station 1 in downtown. It's at
Mhm.
720 East Zach Street,
Okay.
and it's one of the few brick buildings still remaining in downtown Tampa.
So you might know my friend Dominique that bought fire station number 5, right? And
He's
converted
the
it.
welder.
Yes.
Yes, we have one
Yeah.
of his pieces of artwork in the Firefighters Museum.
So I had met him originally on that journey. He was finishing the tail end of converting that space to like living space and
Mhm.
event space, and it was quite a project. It's very expensive to revamp an old firehouse.
It's anybody out there who's got a 100-year-old house or a 100-year-old building knows what it takes to the work that it takes to put it together. And then if you put it on the historic register, then there are all sorts of rules you have to follow. For example, at Tampa Fire Museum, our challenge now is we have to keep our windows wood. We can't put in aluminum frames. And after 20 some years, this wood is beginning to rot. And we're having to find contractors, trying to find grants
Mm.
to restore the windows, to restore the doors, and that could be in excess of $90,000 in repairs because we're a historic building, and so we're hunting for grants and hunting for people who will help us support that mission.
How do you guys get the grants, and how do you fundraise, and like how do you put together your budget to keep that place? Because a building that old requires some money to keep it maintained.
The good news is the Tampa Firefighters Museum has over 450 what we call paver members. They are active and retired Tampa firefighters who give us a little bit of money every month out of their paycheck. So we take that and then we have a nice base that pays the regular
Operating
recurring,
costs.
yeah, the regular recurring bills, the power bills, the water bills,
Mhm.
because the Tampa Firefighters Museum gets no direct support from the city. Uh, we don't get regular money from the city. Matter of fact, we've got to pay our water bill just
Yes.
like everybody else does. Um, from from there, we have fundraisers, as you mentioned. We rent the building out for birthday parties, retirement parties, weddings, whatever you'd like to use the building for in a legal way. Matter of fact, we just had a high school do a prom there. Freedom High School
That's
rented the
awesome.
facility. And the kids, I'll tell you what, I must admit, I was a little concerned about having a bunch of 17, 18, 19-year-olds in the building. They were well behaved, they were handsome, they had a great time, and they had some great music, and they had a good time. We had a good time, and it was a lot of fun having all those young people fill the building. So, so the Fire Museum has support coming in from donors. We have support coming in from members. We have support coming in from rentals. So we've got multiple venue streams that help us maintain the building. Our challenge is trying to get ahead. And that's what the grants help us with. We're applying for a city grant, a county grant. We've also asked the state of Florida for some assistance for example, the window and door project that needs to be done. Recently, the Fire Museum put on a new roof. That was $105,000 for a new roof.
Dang.
And now out of our budget, that was a pretty good hit. But fortunately, thanks to our members, we were able to afford it.
So Pat George must have read my mind, because I was thinking the same thing. I was going to ask you when is obviously you do events and stuff, but you guys are a museum, so you're open for people to tour that. Is there a cost for the museum? Is it free? And what type of things do you have inside the museum? I know you said you're preserving history, so give us a little walkthrough on what's there and how it works.
Well, the Tampa Firefighters Museum does not charge an admission, and the easiest way to set up a time to come visit is hit our website, tampafirefightersmuseum.org. You can send us a message, give us an idea when you want to come. We're there most of the time, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 10 to 2. It's a very small window because we're operating with all volunteers. The volunteer docents will be there to show you around. If you don't want to be shown around, if you just want to come in and look around, that's fine. But please go ahead and hit the website first, tampafirefightersmuseum.org. Send us a message. Let us know when you want to come Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 10 to 2, and we'll show you around. Now, as the tour starts, typically you're coming into our main entryway. The interesting thing is this 1911 building we're in, about 6,000 square feet. When it was built, it never had air conditioning.
Right.
It had these great big windows. So we had to find a place to put modern air conditioning. We had to find a place when we were under construction to put an elevator, to put ADA bathrooms. We actually found out we had to build a whole new building on the outside of the old building. So we didn't put all that modern stuff into the old building. So we'd have a place within the old building to have exhibits. So when you enter the Fire Museum, you're actually entering a entryway building, and we show you shutters that are on the windows. And most people go, oh, storm shutters, even back then. No, those were fire shutters, because we show you a picture of the Fire Museum made of brick, sitting next to houses that are made of pine, and the houses are only maybe that far away from the Fire Museum. Talk about your 0 lot line.
Yeah.
And those pine houses in the teens, 100 years ago, 110 years ago, they were just getting electricity put into them. They were lit by candles.
Isn't that crazy to think that was literally 100 years ago?
Just a little over 100 years ago.
I mean, it's baffling to think that wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't. The progress we've made in the construction standards and all, and a lot of those standards exist because of tragedies such as, most people have heard of the Great Chicago Fire. Most people don't know that Ybor City burnt to the ground. Not only recently, I see Pat over there shaking his head. Yes, he remembers when it was a news story in 2000, but also almost 100 years ago, back in 1908, Ybor City had a major fire, burnt entire Ybor City to the ground. Jacksonville, Florida burnt to the ground. Key West burnt to the ground. These are the stories. These are the pictures. These are some of the artifacts that we maintain in the Fire Museum. Matter of fact, we just took possession of a 1925 Tampa fire truck. It actually worked in Ybor City from 1926 to the 1950s when it was retired. When it was retired, as most city property does when the city doesn't need it anymore, they sold it off. Well, they sold it to a fellow in Carrollwood. He had an orange grove. He was going to use the fire pump to pump water to his grove. Well, this engine in this 1925 fire truck, it's about 3 miles to the gallon.
Oof.
It sucks fuel badly. And once he figured that out, he parked the fire truck in his barn, and that's where it stayed until 1968 when he passed away. Well, then a fellow named Mike Morris, he was a captain on the job. He knew about that fire truck. He went, he pulled it out of the barn. He actually got it started the first day he went there. He purchased it. He took it home. He restored it. It's beautiful. Unfortunately, Captain Mike Morris, who retired in 78 or 79 from the fire department, he passed away a couple of years ago, and his family recently placed the restored fire truck with the fire museum so
Wow.
everybody can see it. It's a beautiful
What
piece
a
of
gift he gave to your museum, you know? Well, what a gift.
it's a beautiful item to have there every time I see it. And it's got 100 stories. I can tell you the nozzle that's on the back of that truck is the nozzle that Mike Morris claims he used for the first fire he ever went into. I can tell you stories about that truck, and we could stand there all days looking at that truck. Then also we have the other thing that people like talking about when we get there is we have a fire pole from the second story of the building down to the first story, and people ask about the fire poles. And they were put into fire stations for a couple of reasons. Number one, the horses. The horses used to find their way upstairs in the fire station.
What?
Yes, they would climb the stairs to go upstairs to find the firefighters, looking for a meal, looking for friendship, looking for something to do.
Well, horses are like big dogs, you
They,
know?
they,
They're gonna follow you.
they really are. So some fire stations put in circular stairs because the problem was the horses could get up, but getting the horses back down, I understand, was the real challenge. So the poles were in the fire station for a couple reasons. Number one, so the firefighters could get down quickly. Number two, so the firefighters could get down and the horses couldn't get upstairs to the dormitories, to the kitchen, so they wouldn't have that problem. And this 1911 fire station that we have our fire museum in is the last Tampa fire station built with horse-drawn apparatus in mind. And when people visit the Tampa Firefighters Museum in downtown, we show them where the horse's stall was, where the horses would have gotten traction to pull the big heavy steamer out onto the city streets.
That is so cool. What a fascinating story. I had no idea. I mean, it makes sense. I just never would have imagined that. It sounds so crazy.
Yeah. Now, most fire stations nowadays up here in like we're currently in Pasco right now, a lot of the fire stations up here are much more modern. They're typically built single story, so the firefighters are close to their equipment and they can get out. The fire trucks aren't known to come into the fire station
Yeah.
without
So
more
what
socialized.
what other things can you find in the Tampa Fire Museum that if someone's coming to visit or maybe they're doing a self tour, what are a couple things in there that they should make sure they don't miss? I know you're talking about the historians as it gets to be over 100 years. There's things they're trying to preserve. What things like that do you have in the museum that people should just absolutely make sure they see?
Well, one of the things that we have hanging on our wall there is a great big life net. Now, if you remember back to your cartoon days, the Saturday morning cartoons, the cartoon characters would grab this life net. There'd be about 6 or 8 of them on it, and they'd try to catch people jumping out of burning buildings onto this life net. The life nets came, if you look at their history, they started becoming popular around the 1850s. About that time, construction was becoming stuff that we were getting iron and we were getting steel, and cities, instead of going outward, were going upward. And the tall buildings were starting to be built in the bigger cities. Well, the problem was if there was a fire in the lower floors, people on the upper floors didn't have a way out. So the firefighter would show up with these life nets, and allegedly people would jump into the life nets. Now, we don't have any stories in Tampa of the life net ever being used in a real situation. Training, yes. Real situation, no. Well, you gotta have
Yeah.
6 or 8 people. We're looking at each
All
other,
of them
go
in it.
left, go right. Okay, lady, you're 5 stories up. Go ahead, and yeah, lady, go. We'll catch you. Sure. I was in New York a number of years ago, and they have a life net there in their fire museum. And it was an older fella giving a tour. And I said, okay, well, do you have any stories of these life nets being used? He says, well, my father was on the job and my grandfather was on the job. What's the possibility, right? A New Yorker having his father and his
Yeah.
grandfather, New York firefighters, his father and his grandfather on the job. He said, they'd hold the net, the people would jump, they'd land on the firefighters, they'd land on the cement, the things didn't work. So, so basically,
It was a good idea in theory, is what you're saying.
it was a bad idea in theory that nobody really fessed up to. So in the 1970s, those were phased out, but we have one there, and as you can tell, it's a great little story. So that's why we encourage people to get on our website, tampafirefightermuseum.org, and let us know they're coming, so that we can try to have one of our volunteer docents there who can share the stories. Because I can show you, a photo, but if I tell you the story behind the photo and something that happens that goes along with that photo, that brings the story alive. I think some people call that television, don't they? Where they
I'm gonna
have
have to.
pictures and stories
I'll have to
together.
come do a tour with my young son. You're gonna have to give us a tour of the Tampa Fire Museum.
Please do. We'd love to have you down there and show you around.
So I think Pat has a question. He wants to know about some of these really tall buildings that we're building here in Tampa. Are we ready? Are we fire ready? Is that the question, Pat?
Yeah. What?
I mean, the codes are different, right? Like we don't have to worry about the life nets now, but
Correct. There are many histories of fire disasters. One that Pat may remember is the MGM Grand in Las Vegas back around the early 80s, 81, 82. The MGM Grand was a great big hotel and casino in Las Vegas. A fire started, smoke got up into the tower, killed, I don't remember how many people, it was dozens and dozens of people, many more hurt, followed almost immediately by another fire in Las Vegas in a hotel there that injured and hurt some more people. And every time there's a huge fire like that, fire codes
tighten up.
they tighten up. And nowadays, you're very safe in a modern, large, high-rise building because
What starts a fire in a big building like that? Is it arson most of the time, or is it something that is like an act of God?
well, let's see. You have kitchens in big buildings and in various restaurants, and the fire can get out of control that way. You have the furniture itself that is flammable. You have electrical components that can short out and fail. You have elevator motors that can short out and fail. But the whole idea behind having these things in the building is having a way to control it. First off, these chairs, if they were in a modern high-rise building, they should be fire resistant. In other words, you could almost hold a match to the material and it shouldn't catch fire. It should be, the material itself should be flame resistant. If there is a fire in a tall building, you have an alarm system, the smoke detectors. They're going to pick up on that smoke very early on and warn the building there's a problem. So it can be handled quickly. So a small fire doesn't become a
Big disastrous mess that you
A
can't
big
put
fire.
out.
Then that tall building's going to have sprinklers. So if that fire does start getting big, that heat's going to rise up, hit that sprinkler head. The sprinkler head's going to break open. 15 gallons a minute is going to pour right down where that fire is. It might not put the fire out completely, but it's going to control it until the firefighters can get there and finish the job. And then lastly, you have a safe exit way. You've got the stairwells. You're 20, 30 floors up, and there's a fire on the third floor. How are you going to get down? Well, the stairwells are made to resist fire, smoke, and heat spread for hours. They are the toughest part of the building. If you're in a big building and there's a problem, head to the stairwells, the place of refuge. Well, I've got a bad knee. I can't walk down 20 stories. That's okay. Get in the stairwell, make sure the door is closed. It'll protect you until help can come and get you out of that big building. Don't go to the elevators. The elevators are the worst place to go in an emergency when when the alarm goes off, because they're an open shaft. Smoke gets in the bottom of an open shaft, comes up, it fills the elevator with smoke. The elevator can fail because it's an electrical component from the fire or the emergency. And
I wonder how many times you've seen a building that has burned, right? Like the fire department couldn't get there fast enough and the stairs are still there, but the rest of the building is gone. Does that happen? You see that?
what you'll see is you'll see a lot of damage on the floor outside. But yes, the
They're
stairs will
still
be
there.
relatively comfortable. The only time the stairs tend to fail is if somebody blocks the door open or damages the door or overrides the safety features that are there. And if you've ever worked in a tall building or a big building that has a lot of fire emergency stairs and exits, people all the time take those little wooden wedges and jam them in so they can go outside maybe and have a smoke. Or they can go outside and take a break, or they can just get away from the boss for a few minutes. Well, those little pieces of wood are enough to override the safety features by blocking that door open so fire and smoke can get into the stairwell.
So that quick little break where you're propping it open is not a good idea.
Just make sure you take that piece of wood out. We know people are gonna do it. You
Right.
tell them, don't do it. Well,
Don't
they're
do
still
that.
gonna do it. Just think about taking that little willy wedge out.
So let's give the people listening to Tampa Home Talk a couple little tips around fire safety. What do you think are some of the most common home fires that you see here in the Tampa Bay area?
Well, what's some of the most common things you do in your home? Let's see, you cook, and cooking's a big one. People who have grease fires, people leave something in the oven, it gets too hot, it starts cooking, or they forget it's in there and they go out, or they even leave their oven on accidentally after they pull something out and the fire starts in the kitchen.
Tell us about the fire blanket.
Oh,
The fire blanket.
I have no personal experience with the fire blanket. I've seen the advertising, I've seen the social media. In theory, it should work. But I have no personal
Is that
experience.
something where you put it on the fire and it puts it out, right?
Yeah, it's a heavy blanket. I'm not sure what it's made of, Pat, but
Something that's
basically,
not fire.
and well, here's the problem. Okay, there's a pan on the stove. You're cooking something, and the product has caught fire. Okay, you've got two choices here. If you cover it or put it out while it's sitting there on the stovetop, the fire doesn't get any bigger. If you grab that pan, here's the mistake. You grab the pan, you go to take it to the sink because you figure you can put water on it. Well, if it's grease and you put water in hot grease, that grease is going to splatter and spark. It's going to burn you. It's going to spread the fire. That's where, or people will take a glass of water and throw it on the
Oof.
burning grease. And once again, it explodes. So the theory behind the fire blanket's good. Like I said, I've got no personal
We're gonna have to
experience.
test it.
And see if it works. So that's. I apologize for keep hitting.
Yeah, they're
that.
super sensitive.
That's
It's fine to
here.
pick up any little thing like paper shuffles, any of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My voice.
I had a kitchen fire one time. I took the whole pan
You
and
did
threw
it?
it in the pool. It worked.
And if you got it that far
I threw it in
safely,
the pool. Yeah, I did.
consider yourself lucky because people will get a short distance. The pan will burn the hand. They'll drop it and sets the whole house on
Might
fire.
grab something that real quick, threw it outside.
I wasn't retired a year, and there are different. When you're an emergency responder, there are different types of knocks at the door. You get used to it, and at the fire station, we got used to them. Sometimes people would knock, 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 knock because they want to come in and have their blood pressure checked, or they want to say hi to the firefighters or some business. And then there's a that means there's a car wreck out front.
Oh shoot.
Or there's a house down the street on fire. Well, I'm at my home. I'm retired, not even a year, and I hear on my front door. It's like, oh my gosh! I open it. It's the little kid from next door. Mr. Bill, mommy says, can you come over to our house? It's on fire. What, JC? Our house is on fire. And I stick my head out the front door, and there's smoke coming out our front door. It's like, dang nabbit. So I yell at my wife, call 911, and I start running over there. And she had the fire on the stovetop. She tried to move it a little bit. It splashed. Now her kitchen's not burning big and bad, but it's burning a little bit. And she had an extinguisher nearby that she didn't think to use.
Yeah.
So I said, where's the extinguisher? It's right there. Got the extinguisher, knocked it down. So she only had a little bit of cabinet damage and a little bit of stovetop.
I was wondering how your next door neighbor fireman responds quickly without a fire truck and equipment and gear and all that stuff. Guess it depends on the extent of the fire, right?
I think we have
What scares me to death.
We're gonna have to just hook up your mic.
I will do that. We'll do that. What scares me to death are electrical outlets. The strips.
oh my God.
The extension electrical strips. I'm sure it's picking up what you're saying from a distance, but we need to get your mic hooked up.
And we'll talk about and that's the next thing. So what's the most popular thing most common thing you do in your house? You cook food. There's probably the most common cause of fires in the home is kitchen fires. Then electrical. overloading electrical. Now, once again, nowadays, a lot of our electrical items that we use are pretty low voltage. They don't pull much, whether it be the computer, this clock I'm looking at here, all of this stuff doesn't pull much. And you could probably get away with daisy chaining power strips. But I'll tell you, especially around the holidays, people start daisy chaining power strips. What I mean by that is they plug power strips into power strips into power strips.
That's what they think happened at the beach. In
Yes.
what was it? St. Pete Beach, the big fire that just happened.
Oh,
It was a bunch of extension
Daisy
cords.
chained
wait,
the outlets.
and that's why if you work in a professional setting, when the fire marshal comes through, if he sees extension cords, he tells you pull them out. But of course, in your home, we can't send a fire marshal in
Right.
there, so you've got to be responsible. So think about how much electricity you're flowing through that little bit of a cord. And also think about where you bought that cord. Any extension cord in my house is a heavier cord, and it's got that piece of paper on it. Do not remove this tag under penalty of law. That's a UL rating that tells me that this cord is tested to carry the amount of electricity that it says it will. If you buy those really cheapy extension cords, the ones that are real thin,
From China with no.
yeah,
That's
From the
it.
dollar store.
at the dollar store, any low price, you're don't
You're
use them
asking for
long.
trouble.
Well, and don't use them long. They wear out quickly. Throw them out at the end of a season, because if you take them, you ball them up, you throw them in the junk drawer.
That's what everybody does.
And 2 years later, you pull it out. It's been all balled up. The wires are busted up. The plug is busted up. How much is your home worth to you?
Yeah. Probably a lot more than the $2 strip you bought at the
That's
dollar
it.
store.
That's it. So get the heavier extension cords. Don't daisy chain them together. It's, of course, it's easy to say. You probably come to my house. I'm sure we have at least
Well,
you know. But they're the heavier. I usually said I try to use the heavier cords. So and the same thing around the fire museum. We try to be cautious about that. You know, we've got our fire museum, and we want to put our holiday decorations up, or
Yes.
people want to come in, and the DJs who come in to have parties at the fire museum, and they want to run 20 different items and lights and stuff. Now nowadays it's a lot better, because those lights are those LEDs.
Yes, they don't require as much
They don't-
voltage.
Exactly, they don't pull as much. And it goes.
So how does that work when you have a DJ that shows up and they find all their stuff they're trying to hook up, and this is the fire museum?
And,
How does
and
that work?
we've had to have conversations. What's the smoker thing, the fog
the
making
fog
thing,
machine, yeah.
and those we've had to tell them no to those anymore, because they put that fog in the building. It limits the visibility of the people.
I was gonna say, there's probably
oil
nothing that
fog.
freaks a fireman out than smoke in a building, right?
And it's a heating device, because it's basically heating the oil to make the fog. So we've had that conversation with a couple of folks, and they understand. They don't really, but they tell us they
Yeah.
do.
If we could give the person listening a checklist of a few things in their home that is a challenge that they should check. Okay, the cheap extension cords, the daisy chain extension cords, kitchen fires. What else? What are some other things people should be checking and looking for as a homeowner, where if they're in the car, they're listening to this, they say, oh, let me just check that when I get home real quick.
Smoke alarms.
Smoke alarms.
Absolutely. Make sure you have a working smoke alarm in your house. Here's the problem.
Oh, mine work. I set them up every time I cook. They definitely work. We test them.
When I was young, as I mentioned, I got into this profession very young. I was still in high school. 1974, one of the first sorry about that, folks. One of the first house fires.
He's like, don't.
My hands.
down.
It's me.
Yeah.
I'll put my hands down here. One of the first house fires I went to had 4 fatalities in it. And there's no reason those people had to die inside of that house, because the fire started in the living room in a couch. It was a improperly discarded smoking material. In other words, somebody left a cigarette.
I was gonna say cigarettes, yeah, at that time.
Yeah. So they went to bed. The small smoldering fire became a burning fire. Now what happens is the smoke gets to you first. The smoke chokes you. People see it on TV and they go, oh, I can get up and I can run through the smoke. No, you can't. That smoke is thick and it's acrid, and one breath of that heated smoke is going to take your breath away. 2 breaths is going to sear you. 3 breaths and you're down. The parents, an adult, their adult daughter and a child died in that house fire. Had they had a smoke alarm very early on when that couch was just starting to smolder, that smoke alarm would have gone off. The older gentleman or the ladies would have gotten up. They'd have gone, oh, why is the smoke alarm going off? They'd have seen the couch burning. They could have, at minimum, gotten out. Maybe even put the fire out. Hard to say. But they wouldn't have died had they had a working smoke alarm. That's what the smoke alarm's for. It's not to let you know dinner's done. So, sorry, that's your most common use. But the smoke alarm is to wake you and your family up in the middle of the night if something happens in your electrical panel, something happens in your kitchen, something happens in the fireplace. I've got a fireplace in my house, an actual wood burning fireplace that, occasionally I'll go to bed and it'll still be smoldering a little bit. There's a certain risk there if it's not out completely. So please, smoke alarm, smoke alarm, smoke alarm.
So between the smoke alarms and like a fire extinguisher in your kitchen, do you think that's enough to prevent a home fire?
Well, there's preventing and then there's putting it out. The smoke alarm lets you know
Right.
your prevention failed.
Yeah, for sure.
The smoke alarm lets you know the prevention. What is Pat trying to show
I
us?
don't know.
The new thing right now, and I'm sure you can hear me through the mics. My voice is kind of loud right now.
Yeah.
But the new thing that I just read about the other day are these phone chargers. They buy some of these cheap ones. They overheat and catch fire. People plug them in their furniture next to their
Oh, I can
sofa.
see that.
They
Yeah.
plug them in their bedrooms where it's close to the bedroom sheets. But like this one that I'm holding in my hand, it's hot right now.
It's hot.
And some of the cheap ones catch on fire now.
Yeah, those I've had that before. My kids have had something plugged in and they'll be near it or something that's hot, and I was like, ooh, throw that away.
Yeah. And that's the thing that people want the cheaper. They want the dollar one and not the $3 or $4 or $5 one that comes with the better device. So just be cautious. So your fire.
That's probably what starts fires more nowadays than like in the 70s and 80s. People would smoke inside their house.
Mhm.
Like you were saying, the couch fire. You probably see a lot less of those and more device fires from things overheating, like either too many things plugged in or those hot boxes from that had your phone plugged in.
I put my phone under my pillow to listen to music one day, and I didn't pay attention to it till I grabbed it again. It was burning hot under my pillow, which the battery in it could have caught fire.
Yeah. So when you're dealing with and you hear about them in the cars also.
Mm-hmm.
So once